Incredibly, it is now March, so that means it is February wrap-up and March TBR time. Hi guys, it is Samantha, and as I just said in my intro, it is that time again. It is the time where all booktubers come together to tell you what they read in the month of February. So that's exactly what I'm here today to do. I'm going to tell you guys what books I read in February and what I plan to read in March. I'm also going to be including my statistics, which I hope are a little bit more streamlined thanks to Brock's wonderful updated spreadsheet. I will link his video down below because he has a link to the spreadsheets that he created so you can track your statistics for the year by month. It's fantastic. He did an amazing job constructing it, so I highly recommend you check it out. Lucky for me, I had a really good reading month. I liked pretty much all of the books that I read, which is always great because nothing sucks more than when you have a bunch of books that you did not like and yet you've had to read them anyway. It's very sad. It's very sad. So now for what I read in February. I read a total of 5 books. 5 books I completed. I started 2. I almost finished 1. Of those books, 1 was a science fiction book, 1 was a classic, and the rest were fantasy. Of the books that I read, 2 of them were 5-star books, and 3 of them were 4-star books, though 1 of them was more 3.5 stars, but I bumped it up to 4 stars. This month, 4 of the authors were male, while 3 were female. Also, the majority of the books that I read this month were published in the 2000s, between 2000 and 2014. Also, the large majority of the books that I read this month were, in fact, hardcovers. The next type were trade paperbacks, and then the smallest was mass market paperbacks, because I actually don't much care for mass market paperbacks, believe it or not. I read a total of 3,544 pages, with the vast majority of those pages going towards fantasy. I also purchased 13 books in February. I'll link my book haul down below if you guys want to go and check it out. Majority of those books were trade paperbacks, with the rest being made up of hardcover or flexi-bound and mass market paperbacks. So those are just some of the statistics from my reading month in February, and now I will tell you guys what books that I read this month and what books I attempted to finish but did not quite succeed in. So the first book that I finished in February was Fuzzy Nation by John Scalzi. Basically how I would describe this book would be a combination of Firefly, the television show, My Cousin Vinny, and a John Grisham novel. I think that is how I would basically summarize how this book was to me. It follows our main character, Jack Holloway, who works on a planet, Zara Corp 23, I think. Basically, he works as a contractor to try and find these rare minerals on these planets, but he ends up finding one such strip which will make him rich if he's able to lay claim to it. And he goes back to his home and he discovers these little cat-like humanoid creatures, and craziness ensues. Basically, what it boils down to is whether or not these creatures are sentient, whether they have human intelligence, because that will determine whether or not this planet can still be mined or will be off limits. And craziness ensues. It's fantastic. It's a really funny novel. I really enjoyed it a lot more than I was expecting to. I haven't read too much sci-fi recently, so this was really great to get back into that genre. John Scalzi's writing is really humorous. It was fast-paced. It has some very intriguing plot developments that I was not expecting, and overall I just really enjoyed it. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars, and I highly recommend it to anybody who is looking to get into some more sci-fi. The next book I finished in February was a reread for me, and it was In the Hands of the Goddess by Tamara Pierce. This is the second book in the Song of the Lioness Quartet. It picks up where the first one left off, so it's following Alana and her course to become a knight. This is one of my favorites in this quartet. I highly enjoyed it just as much as I remember last time I read it, which I think I was like 18 or something, so it's been almost 10 years since I read it. So yeah, it was a quick read, not very big. This is a YA fantasy series, although I would say the first 2 books are more middle grade, but I highly recommend it if you have not checked out Tamara Pierce. She has very strong female protagonists, is an excellent fantasy author. The next book I finished in February was part of a buddy read with a bunch of awesome booktubers, and that book was Therithmatist by Brandon Sanderson. This will be part of the Year of Cosmere, but I believe we are reading it in June, I think. But for those of us who are participating as the hosts in the Year of Cosmere who hadn't read it, we decided to pick it up and read it. It is Brandon Sanderson's young adult fantasy series. It follows our young protagonist, Joel, who wants to become a arithmetist. Basically, arithmetist is somebody who can bring chalk to life, and has many different properties, usually used in defense. And the arithmetists are usually, their sole purpose is to kind of protect the rest of the United Isles from these evil things in the Isle of Nebraska, which is in the center of the islands and where all of these evil chalkling creatures come from. So basically, they're supposed to protect all the other isles from it by using these different chalk abilities. But not everybody is a Therithmatist, and Joel was not chosen to be a Therithmatist. The school that he is attending serves to both teach students to become Therithmatists as well as non-Therithmatist students to learn a profession. And crazy things start happening. Asthmatic students start disappearing, and Joel kind of gets caught up in these events because he's always had a fascination for the study of arithmancy. Basically, he's always had a really strong interest in becoming a arithmetist, so he's studied it as much as he can. He gets caught up in these events. This is a really, really fun novel. Brandon Sanderson has come up with a really unique magic system, I think. It wasn't as exciting, I guess I would say, as I was anticipating it to be. It was definitely well written. But yeah, I highly enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, 3.5, 4. I was kind of teetering between the two, but decided to bump it up 1. It was definitely intriguing. It was very original. Some of the plot events were a little bit predictable, but overall I really enjoyed it. I also really appreciated the drawings in this series. Like, it explains the magic system at the beginning of each chapter. There's a little thing here that has drawings and will explain how some of the magic system works and how some of the chalk defenses work and things like that. And then there's other illustrations scattered throughout. This is also an alternate history retelling, so this takes place in our world, I believe about the turn of the 20th century, except for instead of the United States being one continent, the whole continent is split up into islands, and they have different names, and just different events have been altered from our history, but it takes place still in our world. So that was pretty interesting as well. So yeah, if you like Brandon Sanderson and you've read his other stuff, then I think that you will definitely enjoy this novel as well. It was definitely a quick read, and I really enjoyed it. The next book that I finished in February was another buddy read for me, and that was The Heir of Noveron by Michael J. Sullivan. This is part of the Rhaeria Revelations series. This is my favorite in the series. It is the bind-up of 2 of the novels, which is Wintertide and Precipicus, and it basically just ties out the story. I love this one. It is so good. I don't want to say too much because it's going to give away a lot of the plot points of the story, but suffice it to say, it is definitely the best of this series. I highly enjoyed it. I love the ending to the story, and I cannot wait for his new series coming out next year, I think it is, which is taking place in the same world, but 1,000 years prior, I believe it is. I'm just really, really, really excited. Michael J. Sullivan is a fantastic author. He is able to give you an engaging and fast-paced, easy-to-read fantasy story that is just fantastic. And if you have not checked it out already, I strongly suggest you do because it is amazing. Everything you could want in a fantasy series, this sort of series is just fantastic. So I kept this one at my 5 out of 5 star rating. The last book I finished in February was Bleak House by Charles Dickens. This is, I believe, considered to be one of Charles Dickens' masterpieces. This is a chunker. It's about 989 pages. I actually started it in January but finished it this month. I ended up listening to about half of it on audio because I decided to listen to it while I worked and then I would read it at home. So I listened to about half of it and I read the other half, and I really enjoyed it. I am actually going to be doing a full review and discussion on this book because there is a lot to talk about, I think, and I want to do it a little bit more thoroughly. I still like Great Expectations the best, but this one was still very enjoyable. It follows a lot of different characters who are all twined together in some way, pretty much just around this one case, Jarndyce and Jarndyce. It is an inheritance case. Everybody's fate is kind of tied up in it. A lot of different things happen. Just a lot goes on. It's a really hard novel to explain because there's so much detail and depth to it, which is why I want to do a review discussion on it. So look out for that sometime soon. I definitely have to plan that one out. It's not something I can just kind of do a video on by flying by the seat of my pants, but it's just a lot going on with this book. I would say if you're just new to Charles Dickens and you want to pick up some Charles Dickens, I would not start with this one. I would start with maybe Great Expectations. This one is definitely a chunker and there's just a lot going on to it, but overall it's still pretty good and I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. So the next 2 books I started in February, but I was not able to finish. Unfortunately, I got really close to one of them. That first one is Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb. I ended up getting about 535 pages into it, so I have about like 250 pages left maybe. It's big. It's like 840 pages, I think. I am really, really liking this book. I'm also doing this as a buddy read with a bunch of other people. I'm really enjoying it. I think that in some ways it is a little bit long, but I'm still really enjoying it. I like character-driven fantasy stories. I like fantasy stories that have a lot of obstacles because I don't really like it when book series or book stories, fantasy stories, everything goes a little bit too smoothly for the hero, so I do like that. I also like that Fitz is a very complicated character. He has a lot going on. In this book, he's definitely dealing with a lot of anxiety issues, and that definitely shows. He's struggling a lot, and he has been through a lot, and I'm just really, really enjoying it. It's one of those books I cannot put down. All weekend, I've been up until like 1 in the morning or so reading this book because I just can't put it down, so I think it's definitely going to be either, I think 4.5 stars. I definitely liked book 2 a little bit better. I haven't gotten to the end of this though, so that might get bumped up to a 5-star rating depending upon the ending. But overall, I'm really enjoying it. It could be a little bit shorter, but overall, I have just been able to fly through it. I think since Friday, I've read about 400 pages of it. So yeah, really, really enjoying it. Really good series. I highly recommend you check out Robin Hobb if you have not done so already. The next book I started in February is another reread for me that I'm doing as a buddy read with Michael from Bitten by Radioactive Book and Sabrina from Stay Cucino, and that is The Fox by Sherwood Smith. This is the second book in my favorite series ever, one of my favorite series ever, I should say, and that is the Inda series. This is, I believe, my favorite one. I can never remember if it's this one or the next one. It's been a while since I reread them. But so far, it's just as good as I remember. There's a lot of ship and pirate action in this book in particular. A lot goes on. And I only got about 180 pages into it. I wanted to get a little bit more into it, but I got kind of sucked into Assassin's Quest. So I'll be finishing this book in March, and I cannot wait to see what they think about it. Alright guys, so those were the books that I read in February, so I will show you the books that I know for sure I will be picking up in March as part of Buddy Reads and some other books that I know I just want to get to and read. So I have a rather ambitious TBR for March planned, but I have been able to get a lot of reading done lately, so hopefully I will be able to get these books read. The first book that I'm going to be picking up in March is Sabriel by Garth Nix. I'm going to be doing this also as a buddy read. I have never read Garth Nix, which I think is a crime. I've been meaning to for years, so I'm excited to get into this series. The next book I'm going to be picking up is also a buddy read. And that is going to be The Thousand Names. I've heard a lot of good things about this book so far, so I'm excited to see what I think of it myself. The next book, which is also a buddy read, we were supposed to read last month, but due to a lot of book conflicts, was not able to get to, and that is In Search of the Red Dragon, which is the second book in the Imaginarium Geographica by James A. Owen. Really enjoyed the first book, so I'm excited to get back into the series and read more in the second book, and plus these covers are just gorgeous. I absolutely love them to death. I don't know why I sung death. Next is going to be a book for the year of Cosmere, and that is The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson, book 2 in the Mistborn trilogy. Excited to read it. I haven't read it yet. I have only read The Final Empire, which I read back in August, so I'm excited to get back into this fantasy series. Plus, these are the UK covers, and they are gorgeous also. So many pretty covers. The next book is another one I was also intending to get to last month, but did not happen, and that is the second book in the Parasol Protectorate series, Changeless by Gail Carriger. This is a steampunk novel, steampunk paranormal book, so there's vampires and werewolves and things. Also, I think it's the first series where I've actually liked where that has vampires and werewolves, so that's been nice. I'm excited to get back into these. These are just really fun, really entertaining, and hilarious books. So yes, it'll be a lot of fun, with also some very serious creepy covers, because I do not like this cover, but you know. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? The next book I am hoping to get to is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I've been meaning to read this book for years. I love Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, and I've heard mixed reviews on Wuthering Heights. Some people really love it, and some people do not like it at all. So I'm excited to see where I fall in that spectrum, and hopefully that will occur this month. Next up is Merlin, The Lost Years by T.A. Barron. This is the first book in the Lost Years of Merlin series. This is a reread for me, but it's been literal years since I read it, so I cannot wait to get back into it and to see if I like it just as much as I did before. Really, really good Arthurian retelling from the perspective of Merlin. And no, it has nothing to do with the show, sadly. It does not. But these covers are cool, so that's good. Alright guys, those were the books that I read in February, as well as the books that I'm hoping to read in March. Let me know down in the comments if you've read any of these books and what your thoughts were on them, as well as what you're hoping to read in March. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, happy reading. Have a wonderful reading month. And until next time, bye!